Okay, I have 5:15, and it looks like area access is good to go. So I call the meeting of the Economic Development Committee to order at 5:15 on Tuesday, May 7th, 2024. The first item on the agenda is to elect a chairperson for the 2024-2026 term. Are there any nominations for chair? Yes, Alder Killian.
I would like to nominate Gary Gisselman for chair.
Alder Gisselman, do you accept?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for chair? Alder Hanky?
I'll nominate Alder Lukens.
Alder Lukens, do you accept?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for chair for this committee? Okay. Is there a motion to close nominations? Okay, by Tierney. Okay, so now we'll vote. So I'll just hand out a Post-it to each person. You write down between Alder Gisselman and Alder Lukens which one you'd like to be chair. We'll total them up front, and then that, if there's a majority, that person would become chair. Thank you.
Angel can't make it, so.
We can do this together. Okay, so with a vote of 3-2, Alder Lukens will be the chair of the Economic Development Committee. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to her.
Oops.
Since it's a master switch for everyone,
This
it's
is
yours.
okay. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is that we need to select a vice chair for the 2024 to 2026 term of the Economic Development Committee. So are there any nominations? Alder Gisselman, would you accept the nomination for vice chair?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to nominate Chet Henke.
Okay. Alder Hinkie, would you accept the nomination for vice chair? Okay, thank you. Any others? Okay, so we do this the same?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll do the same process.
Yeah. 6 o'clock, so I'll be leaving a little bit before 6 o'clock. But you'll still have a quorum.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay. Okay, so the vote is a 3-2. Alder Hinkie is named vice chair. Thank you. So the next item would be to, is listed as number 2 on the agenda to establish a regular meeting date and time for the 2024-26 term of the Economic Development Committee. So typically, is it always usually Tuesdays? Okay. So it has been the second Tuesday of the month at, usually at 5:15. No, first Tuesday. Hold on. Right? First or second? First Tuesday of the month at 5:15. And that, okay. So does anyone have conflicts? Is this a good time? Do we need to change the time at all? Will you, Alder Gesselman, have a conflict often with it? Okay. So this would be, what about the rest? 5:30?
Oh, do you turn the master off? The left one. There.
I'm sorry.
It's your first day. Is it possible to do 5:30? It's just a very tight squeeze for me with working.
What about the rest of you? It works for me. Does that work? 5:30? Okay. So we will meet at 5:30 then, first Tuesday of the month.
Do we need a motion on that, or?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
I make a motion to make the meeting time 5:30.
thank you. Is there a second? Second by Alder Gisselman. Everyone in favor? Say
Aye.
aye, please.
Aye.
Okay. Anyone in opposition? Okay, thank you. Next then on the meeting would be the approval of minutes from the April 3rd, 2024 meeting. Has everyone had a chance to look over the minutes? I know some of you weren't at that meeting. Alder Henke and I were. So
I'll move to
Any-
approve the meeting, the
Oh,
minutes
is there a
from the
second?
previous meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so motion by Alder Hinkie, second by Alder Tierney. Everyone in approval? Say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Anyone in opposition? Okay, thank you. The minutes are approved. Number 4 on the agenda was the presentation from Centergy, but that's going to be postponed. That will be brought to a future meeting. So then we move on to number 5, which is an update, excuse me, on the Foundry on 3rd LLC.
Yeah, and I'll be able to give just a quick update on this, really, in order to get Alder Gisselman on his way. We have a closing plan between T-Wall and Waz later this week. They'll be breaking ground later this month. Expect an announcement on that in terms of a ceremony on that towards the end of the month here, but they're on pace to meet their June 1 commencement date, so everything's looking good.
Great, that's wonderful. Any questions at all?
Do,
Alder Tierney?
thank you. Do they have an estimated end date on this project?
Well, we do have Chuck Adorsey from Waz. Do you have an idea on what the timeline is? I know what the development agreement says, but I think you can speak to this better than I can.
I know what it says too, but I'm not exactly sure I remember. But I think it's November of 2026. It's about an 18-month build period, and it will require that we have occupancy permits for that completion date. So Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have one more question.
Sure, Alder Killian?
I believe at the last meeting that T-Wall was represented, they indicated that their financing was almost secured. Has it been secured?
I can't answer the question specifically for Nick, but I will say that there's been a lot of progress on it. There has been paperwork that has gone back and forth, so it's quite the project, and I'm encouraged that it is there.
Well, it's encouraging that it might be there.
Yeah.
But I think we as a city need to know that it is in place.
Yeah.
So any idea when we would know that? You can't speak for them.
I can't speak for the foundry on that. I would hope it's very soon.
And will they let us know before the groundbreaking that
sure
it's
they
been
will.
secured?
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
You bet.
Okay, any other questions from the committee?
Do-
Alder Tierney?
I guess it's my feeling, because of the delays that we've had with T-Wall, that we must know that the financing is secure before groundbreaking. Because I would hate to see us get into this and get partway through and then have a problem with the finances. So I propose that T-Wall has to verify that they do have the financing before groundbreaking.
And this is just an updated item. We can talk to them and have them provide that update at a future meeting. So we can't really take any action in terms of direction, but I can definitely pass that along and make sure that they're aware that we're looking for that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Moving on to number 6, then, discussion and possible action on First Amendment with Gorman and Company LLC and Riverview Lofts, Wausau LLC for West Side Commons. Mr. Pfeiffer.
Yeah, thank you. And apologies in my write-up. I had written Wausau Ave, and that's incorrect. That's not close to the location of the project. But what we're looking to do here is, based on our previous discussions and what we put in our development agreement, the idea was that the city was going to work with Mandarin and the property owners there to secure an easement for that property in order for them to make that connection. Just based on the discussions and them working with their engineering company, they're going to take care of those accommodations. So this is really just removing an obligation from the city. So it just takes away one thing that we needed to do that everybody's on board with. So happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. I noticed in section 3D, the section that's being removed, the city had a deadline of July 30th or 31st by when to secure the easement. Is there a deadline for the developer? And if there is a deadline for the developer and they don't secure that easement timely, do they still have an option to terminate?
Well, it's going to remove that obligation completely. So they're doing all the work. We were just helping them make the connection. So really what this will mean for the project is that they'll simply need to get an excavation permit from the city. So it's taking away our obligation. That deadline no longer exists, partially because they want to move forward on a faster timeline than what we had in there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the committee? Then I'm seeking a motion, correct?
Correct.
For, Alder Henke.
Yeah, I was just going to make the motion
Oh,
for you. I'll
thank
move
you.
to approve the First Amendment with Gorman Company LLC and the Riverview Lofts.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, second by Alder Killian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. No one in opposition. Okay, that motion is approved. Moving on to number 7, discussion and possible action on request for interest for River Life South. Mr. Pfeiffer.
And this is kind of a part of our ongoing process in order to try to define a better process for development within the city. Previously, we'd done a lot of requests for proposals or RFPs where somebody would submit a very specific plan for what they had done. From the developer side of that, it requires them to put a lot of resources, time, and money into submitting something that may not get chosen. Our idea with this RFI process is that we'll be able to work with them a little bit more to refine what product they're bringing forward. So we're looking for companies that want to work with us, and that'll provide us with an opportunity to do a little bit more back and forth with them to make sure it's something that's going to fit our needs as well as theirs. We went through, if you remember back, there was a RFP process for those that had been on the committee previously. And really what that was is our internal process where we're trying to check with all the other departments to ensure that what we're putting out there is complete with all the information. We don't want there to be any surprises in this process for the developer as well as us. So it's just a continual process. You'll remember back 2-3 years ago, there was a proposal on this site for some condos, I believe it was condos, that we had given multiple extensions to. Ultimately, the project didn't move forward. We've had some interest in this property from developers, and we feel that this is a good time to move that forward, that we'll be able to take a look at it, and hopefully sometime next year, we'll see some progress out there. Happy to take any questions.
Alder Killian?
Why are we moving to the south parcel rather than working on the parcel that we were working on with Mr. Swiderski? And my second question would be this: if somebody as solid as Mr. Swiderski felt that a development wasn't feasible, what has changed? Why do we think that, certainly the interest rates haven't gone down, I don't know if the supply chains have improved. Why are we optimistic that we can get a developer and can make it work at this time?
Great question. So the reason we're looking at the southern property is because we've had more interest from the development community. People have been reaching out. We had 2 developers that I can think of that reached out with interest in doing this, and that's why we're moving forward with that project. We haven't heard as much on that northern piece, and I think the second part of your question, a lot of it comes down to scale. That was a rather large project with a large parking garage, where we're anticipating that we're looking at smaller projects in this area. So that's why we're looking at the south project and bringing it forward at this time.
I did notice that in the description of what the city was looking for, it said that they want to take advantage of the natural amenities of the parcel. Are we going to be fairly rigid about that? Because I know there have been a lot of complaints about not enough green space, about too much high-end development, and so forth and so on. So what are the attributes that we're going to be looking for? Do you know?
I think what we've talked about before and what we're talking on that northern piece is that making sure it's accessible to the river yet, so that it's not creating development that takes away from that asset and the path that we have there. Obviously, there's going to need to be some development there. The city spent a fair amount of money in purchasing those properties and working through the environmental process with cleaning that up. So we've got to have some way to recoup that cost as well as provide some tax base on that property. But we want to do that in kind of concert with what we have there with the river and the path.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Tierney had a question.
Yes, I actually have a couple of questions as well. I guess my first question is, why are we doing that now? We have multiple other developments going on that have obviously been stalled by the developers. And I don't understand why we are moving forward with this now when we haven't been successful in even beginning some of our projects that are already on the books.
So we're always trying to keep a schedule of different projects. So if you remember back for the North Riverfront, sorry, you may not have been a part of this. So with the North Riverfront, that was almost 2 years ago when we went up for that RFP process. There's a long process involving the development agreement and coming together, allowing them to get their financing. So it's just kind of getting those projects so we're always having something moving forward. We feel with the interest that we've had on the property that we'll have some proposals. So the way this process will work, they'll submit a project or interest in the property, and then that'll all come back to you as a committee who can look at the projects, decide if you like something. If you don't like anything at all, we don't move forward with them, which is really sending an invitation out to the development community to see if there's interest.
Okay, and my second question is, if you find multiple developers that you think might fit the category that you're looking for, who is responsible for background checks to make sure these are solid developers, that they have a good track record, that there's not legal action that's been taken
Yeah.
against them?
No, that's a good question. And that's kind of all part of our vetting process, and we'll bring that information to the committee. It's part of our ranking process as well. We have specific criteria that we're going to be reviewing as part of that. A lot of the people that we'll probably be working with are somebody that we've worked with in the past, or somebody that's got a reputation out there. We can go back and look at their work. But all that's taken into consideration as we're looking at which project or which company we want to choose moving forward.
Okay. Does the council have a say in which,
Yep.
okay, thank you.
Yep. So the way the process will work, it'll come to your committee first. You'll make a recommendation ultimately to the council's final vote.
Does it go to finance after ED or not necessarily?
I believe if there's going to be any type of financial commitment from the city, we would bring it
Yeah, then
forward
it
through
would.
finance as well.
Okay. Yeah, usually if there are a few developers that are interested, then we look through it, like you said, and rank them and discuss it. So that all goes before the committee. Any other, Alder Gitzelman?
So what properties are we talking about? Marathon County owns some land, if you could, Marathon County owns 212, 210 River Drive, and then it goes down to a little bit further on south. What is it that, can you talk a little bit about the development of that land?
Yeah, so specifically what we're looking at with this RFI is the property that we have in the packet, which is that area south of the River Life Apartments in between Fulton First and the river. That's what we're specifically looking at. I know the property you're talking about, and until we get more defined on how that's going to work between the county and city, we're just working on what we have right now.
Does that help?
So you're extending Fulton Street west from First Street?
No, there won't be any road improvements as part of that. That Fulton Street extension's already there. That's serving the River Life apartments that are built to the north of this site. I think Andy's going to pull up a map here.
So it'll be this area
Yep.
here. So there's the River Life apartments.
Yep, so River Life to the north and the area to the south is where that condo project was proposed.
Right.
That's the area we're targeting with this request for interest.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other question? Alder Hanky and then Alder Tierney.
So are we going away from request for proposal standards and doing this in the future, or?
We're going to give this a try.
Okay.
Development is a continuing process, and we're always looking to improve it. So depending on how this goes, we'll make some decisions based on that. But we want to try a slight hybrid of that to just see if we get more interested developers. It's beneficial as well that it takes less upfront costs for them. We're so potentially opening it up to a wider base. We've got a pretty good database of potential developers that we'll send this out to. We've got a developer FAM tour, so familiarization tour that'll be coming through Wausau in June. So we want to show off this property and hopefully have some interest from those folks.
Alder Tierney? Oh, you don't have, okay. Anything else? Oh, Alder Hanky?
I move that we approve and move this forward, the request for interest for the River Life South.
Okay, is there a second? Alder Killian? Okay, everyone in favor? Say
Aye.
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 Aye. And any nays? Okay, that motion is approved to move that forward. Next, number 8 is discussion and possible action on the sale of the southerly one half of the Franklin Street right-of-way vacated by the City of Wausau Resolution, document number 718987 to the YMCA. Mr. Pfeiffer.
Yeah, I apologize. The packet's a little bit out of order. This is the last item in your packet, starting on page 66. What we're talking about with this is proposal from the YMCA and the landing approach the city about a vacated remnant from Franklin Street, which is adjacent to their property to accommodate some growth at their facility. What they're looking to do is the construction of a skywalk from the new main entrance at the landing to the parking field located west of 3rd Street. And part of this is some bigger implications. Infrastructure Committee later this week will be meeting to take a look at some of those, and really what it's proposing will be some proposed angle parking located along some of the streets around there. If you remember, the council had some conversations about what to do with the parking around there, and this is what was brought forward in order to accommodate some of those different needs. Happy to take any questions. We've got representatives from the YMCA and the landing that can help as well.
Alder Tierney.
My question is, does the city have any financial interest in helping the Y with the Skywalk, or is this totally funded by them?
They're funding that. So what we're talking about specifically today is the sale of that remnant piece. We had our assessor take a look and value that piece based on what he's been working on, and he gave us a cost of $32,000, which they would be paying the city for that remnant piece.
Okay.
Other questions? Alder
Do you
Killian.
do you have a map that shows exactly where that parcel is located adjacent to the Y?
I could show you on here.
And if you look at page 68 in your packet, it'll show where that remnant piece is in regards to the YMCA in Franklin Street.
So
Okay, so the skywalk is going to go from the main entrance of the landing to across 3rd Street, is that correct? So where's the parcel, so why do they need, where's the parcel?
The parcel is the parcel that we're looking to sell is that area that's got the red hashing on it.
it's right.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's this red hashing,
Okay,
and that would be there. It's a street remnant, right?
Yeah.
So from Franklin. Is
Okay.
that clear?
kind of, yeah. So I walked over there when it said it was going from the main door of the landing, so I walked over to the main door of the landing, and then it said it proceeded west across 3rd Street, correct? So if it's going to be from the main door of the landing, why do they need more land?
I would invite any of the representatives from the YMCA landing to answer the question.
My name is Tom Renz, REI, 4080 North 20th Avenue. So the interested area is that red crosshatch. And so this is a building line of the landing. And then here's that connection that goes between the older portion of the Y and the newer portion of the Y. And this is where Franklin Street used to go through. And that was vacated back in the 70s. And so what we've been working on is trying to figure out, because we've got great growth of the landing and the YMCA, we're trying to get the new front door of the landing in this location. Reason being is there's a lot of traffic up in this area, and there's a lot of noise and commotion, and so we're trying to get a dedicated entrance for the landing. And that landing is a 55 and older community. And we recognize that we're going to come before the group with the city with some additional parking. We tried 404 Franklin recently. That was not met favorably, and so big picture, we're trying to go across the street at a future date on 3rd. And so to do that, we need to get a skywalk, and we'd hang that on the building on the south face, the north face of the old building. And we need to purchase this piece of property so that building can extend, and that blue hatch would be the new skywalk that would get us all the way across. And that gets us to the ability to do some more intense parking opportunities on the west side of 3rd Street.
Do you know, and this may, I don't know if this is okay for the agenda today, but I have a question. The angled parking that they're looking at, do you know if any of those areas abut residences, or will they all be by vacant lots or commercial properties? Do you know that?
Yeah, they only abut either YMCA property, owned property, or a Yawkey Park. They don't abut any residents.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Alder Henke?
Is this going to be on the second level, or, because there's kind of two levels of walkways there right now?
It'd be on the second level, the upper level, because we have to get clearance over third.
Yep, okay. Yeah, I didn't know if you were going up another level or not, but,
Yeah.
okay.
Any other questions? If not, let's see. I am looking for a motion then to approve the sale of that portion of Southerly. Do I need to read it all?
Correct.
Do I read it? So I'm looking for a motion to approve the sale of the Southerly one half, right, of the Franklin Street right-of-way vacated by the City of Wausau, resolution document number 718987 to the YMCA.
Make a motion that we go forward with the sale.
It would be good to include the sale price of $32,000 if we could in there, to be clear.
Sure.
So do you need me to re-say it? To restate it?
I make a motion that we move forward and sell that property in question for the $32,000 as stated.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Okay, second by Alder Killian. All in favor?
Question.
Oh,
So is this infringing on is some green space from the park going to go away?
Well, the space that's there currently, yes, that would go away. We had looked into, Attorney Jacobson can speak to this better than I can. She took a look at it to make sure that it wasn't dedicated parkland, because that would have different repercussions as part of this. And it's not included in our parkland. It's just the remnant Franklin Street, but for all intents and purposes, it's been green space.
Thank you.
so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any nays? No? Okay, that motion is approved. Moving on then to number 9, discussion and possible action on North Riverfront Plan RFP. So request for proposal.
And I'll turn that over to our dynamic planning duo of Lynch and Lenz.
All right.
Do you need this?
Okay, I guess that is on. Great. Second. I guess we never did discuss which one of us is going to present this, but we'll just go for it. Yes, so I guess in some instances, we are going back to the RFP process. But we had brought to this committee before the idea of doing a redevelopment plan on the North Riverfront area, and this would be from Bridge Street on the east side of the river north until that parcel north of Winton as well. And we had kind of talked about a couple of items related to, things we felt were important for this. So we've put together this proposal as a draft right now, looking for your input or approval, and just kind of walk through. Some of the items we had talked about before is looking to have a lower intensity residential development. So the residential development that would be there would be a little bit lower intensity than the River Life area, but not single family homes. So something a little bit higher than that. Finding some defined commercial corridors and opportunities for that. Extending River Drive along the river, so you can actually drive on river. And the three main parcels that we're looking at here are the Wausau Chemical and also the former City Waterworks on the south there. In the middle, the former Great Lakes Cheese Site, and on the north third, the former County Materials Storage Site. And then around that, you see the orange line, which kind of indicates a planning area where we felt that, of course, the neighborhood being kind of integral to how that area is used, and they should have some input on that, and also really the kind of one of the things we want to make sure we don't do is burden that area with too much additional traffic. There's limited access in there. Basically, if you want to get to the riverfront, you have Winton, you have Wausau Ave, and you have River Drive as the most direct access. So really looking to see what we can do to improve that access without having any kind of excess traffic burden on the neighborhood. They already have a lot of impacts from baseball games and other events, so we just want to be very aware of that. So we've just included some additional plans that have, referenced on that. And really looking at them at the plan to kind of identify the type and placement of residential and commercial development, looking at some kind of connectivity to the riverfront, and, looking for some really, excellent public infrastructure that, anyone coming down the riverfront can use. And, also looking to honor our current parking contracts, our agreements with Wausau Woodchucks, which is a consideration for major generator of traffic in that area. So timeline-wise, we're really looking at getting this out soon, and looking to have it, the RFP response due by the end of June. And then it would go to the selection committee and be viewed by this committee as well. So it's going to open it up for any questions. Oh, Gillian?
I see that,
Yeah.
sorry. I see that public input is emphasized in the writing, and will that public input come or be sought after the consultant is procured?
So the public input will be done by the consultant as part of their process. We would just make sure that what they have planned is consistent and constant throughout the process, in order to make sure that the neighborhood especially is involved with that.
Yeah, I see that they're Alder Gisselman's district and Alder McElhaney's, and
Yes.
I would value the input of both of those Alder people. So, the second thing is Wausau Chemical, is that still a Superfund site? Is that still active? I'd really like to know the status of that site.
Yeah, so it's in the process of, there was money budgeted in the 2024 budget to start the cleanup process. The city's in the process of hiring a consultant that'll work with the DNR to go through that process. It's a long process, looking probably 8 to 10 years is what I've been told.
Okay, so you're hiring a consultant to talk about or propose ideas about what to put on that Superfund site, and that's going to take 8 to 10 years, so why are we doing that now?
That's a really good question. We do have two other portions there, the Great Lakes Cheese site and the County Materials site, that could be available for development. And as much as this plan may tell us, what can go there, it also may help direct what really shouldn't go there. There may be, someone may propose that I want to put in, an industrial use back there or something, and we could refer to the plan and say that's really not something that, the city nor the neighborhood or anyone else really would desire. So I think it gives us some protection and allows us, to kind of work on a long timeline. Obviously, I mean, the Wausau Chemical site's not going to be ready for quite a while to do anything.
Well, and the write-up also indicated that they were looking at low-intensity housing. What is low intensity?
let's see, lower intensity.
What does that mean?
So, kind of like what I mentioned before is, a single-family home would not be necessarily dense enough, but we're looking for something a little less intense or dense than the river life area. And that would kind of give this section of the riverfront its unique feel. So we're kind of leaving it open enough that, we can, I guess, be responsive to the market or what the consultant may suggest, but also kind of setting some mileposts as far as where we want kind of that area, that intensity to land.
Thank you for that. Just as a personal opinion, I certainly could not see placing housing on a Superfund site, that,
And that may be the recommendation, that's,
okay, just an opinion. Thank you.
yeah.
And just want to go back to the conversation about the Wausau Chemical, as well as where we have the current city plant, is that this is a big area and development takes time. If we were just to wait for that to become available before we move north, we're going to be waiting for some time. There's other implications in terms of infrastructure planning that needs to take place that we'll probably end up jumping further north and then working our way back down south as part of the full development of this. But when we get through the planning process, searching for developers, that's a long process. So hopefully by doing this and taking this step now, we'll be ready to take advantage of it when the market conditions and everything's right to do so.
Did you say that you are hiring a separate consultant for the Superfund site, correct?
Yep, so the city will be hiring an I forget the name of the company, but they're specifically, this is what they do, is they work through the cleanup of environmentally contaminated sites such as that.
If that's going to take 8 to 10 years, why are we spending money on a consultant to tell us what we can build there or maybe can't ever build there? Why would it not be better just to hire the consultant for the portion north of that instead of spending money on him consulting on a
Sure.
portion he can't do anything with?
Sure, that's a good question. The way that the River Life area has always been portrayed, or the concept of it is, it's going to go from the north to the south. So we want to make sure there's good continuity through there. Maybe at the end of the day, depending on what we see back, that's more of a green space area. But we want to make sure that the infrastructure that's going to be developed on the north side is going to be able to flow through that area, and that we have good continuity along that entire stretch.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Alder Tierney, his questions.
Don't you think that we should be looking at procuring a contractor, a developer for the land that we already plan to develop by River Life? I mean, you're talking about this very long period of time before we can develop things, and we have something that we want to do relatively soon and don't have a developer for. I guess I don't personally see why we should be spending money now for something that may not happen until 8 years from now. And at that point, we're going to be looking at old information. And then what I see happening is you hire another consultant and spend more money 8 years from now saying what we decided 8 years ago just isn't feasible at this point anymore, so you tell us what is. In my mind, that's putting bad money in
Sure.
right now.
Sure, and so the idea is, so if you look and pretty much take Bridge to the south, that area of the city has gone through a lot of different plans throughout the years, and we're really in the building stage of that. So you've got the playground, we've got WOW, we've got where Bricks is currently, River Life Apartments. So we've kind of gone through and said what we want to see there. Now it's just a matter of finding the developers. So what we're trying to do is start that process on the north side. And that's, some of the plans that we have go back 2015, there's some 2018, 2020 stuff. So it's a process, and depending on how the economy goes, it could happen very quickly. It could take longer, but it's just kind of that first step in the process.
Okay, well, you're saying that you had information from back in 2018, which is 6 years ago. So now you're hiring a consultant again, 6 years later, to say, well, this is what we should do. Now, that's why I'm saying 8 years from now, you're going to be hiring another consultant. Because you'll say the information that we have is 8 years old. Just like you have said about your 2018 information.
Yeah, and maybe it'd be better if we pull up a map, Andy.
Sure, which one do you?
Just think of the one that you have there, or whatever you have. That Google was probably
Yeah,
very nice.
okay.
So if you see where Bridge Street is, so we've gone through the planning process on this area to the south. That's how we went about the development for the River Life Park, Wow, where we have the existing parcels where Swiderski was looking at, as well as River Life Apartments and the property to the south. So we've already gone through this step on that southern piece. We're in the process, like we talked about earlier with that RFI, getting the development on it now. So this process from East Bridge all the way up to the county materials property is going to define how we work through there. Obviously, what we have some time considerations with the Wausau chemical property, but we've got to make some decisions on how infrastructure, specifically the road's going to work through that area, and that's going to have an implication on how we build north of East Wausau Avenue. So in order to take a full look at this, we need to take a look at consideration of that Wausau chemical site as well as the former Great Lakes Cheese and county materials all as one. It's not necessarily going to lay out, this is going to be where the building is, but we're looking at maybe some type of commercial here. We think this is a good area for multifamily. This is an area where we can do less dense development. Maybe this is an area for green space.
Don't you think it would be better to get the input from the residents in that area before you start moving forward with a plan? Instead of saying, this is what we're going to do, what do you folks think?
Yep. So the process will get the input from the residents first before any, it's part of the planning process is to gather that input from stakeholders, from residents or businesses already in the area. And honestly, because it's a city amenity that can draw the input from the city as a whole. And I think it's also important to kind of view this in three sections, kind of like it's laid out here. The Wausau chemical site is this lower section, and that will have its timeline as far as its remediation and cleanup. The Great Lakes Cheese section here in the middle, that has, maybe that will be an area we can develop sooner. And the same thing goes for the county materials site to the north of that. So what we're really trying to do is make sure we just have consistency through the area for, that's why we want to do the plan. But also, as Randy mentioned, if we put in infrastructure, if we have a better idea of what's possible on the sites, even if it's 8-10 years out in the future, then we don't risk, having to go back and fix infrastructure in order to, accommodate something that if we just leave out an area, we don't plan for that. So we're really trying to just look forward as far as we can that's feasible.
And what do you think will be the cost to the city for that consultant?
So we have, for this plan,
I think I saw something in the neighborhood of 100,000.
yes, not to exceed 100,000. That was in the TID 3 or I don't remember exactly which TID it was in. It was budgeted for that in the
Okay.
tax increment district.
And what happens when the consultant comes back and says it's going to be 250,000?
I would not suggest selecting them.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Or did you have any more? I'm sorry. Did you? Okay. So the request for proposal process. So are you, just so that I have it clear in my mind, the request for proposal is for a consultant?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
okay. To then give an idea, okay.
And we would engage them to write the plan, which would involve, on their end, gathering the input, looking at market conditions, future conditions, seeing what's possible with the sites, given the dimensions, the infrastructure that's there, what might be needed, and kind of, looking at any kind of things that might crop up that we may not be aware of, and maybe they've seen in other places. They do, outside consultants do have the advantage of being able to see a lot of different areas all over a region, multiple states, and kind of be able to draw from that knowledge.
Other questions? Alder Tierney?
Yes.
Based on the amount of time that it's going to take before we can even look at developing some of this project, when we're talking about 8 years, I just can't support a consultant at this time, being it that far away. Thank you.
I have a question.
Alder Killian?
Is there any way, I agree about having that consultant used for for the Wausau chemical site if it can't be used for 8 or 10 years. Is there any way to have that consultant just take a look at the 2 properties north of there and say, this is what we could do? I don't know how that would affect the infrastructure, but how much is the consultant going to cost for the Wausau chemical site? We're looking at 2 different people here, 2 different entities, so how much is that one going to cost?
Yeah, so it's kind of like going to a vet versus a dentist. They're really consultants that are doing 2 different things. So the environmental consultant specifically looking at that property, how to remediate, working with the DNR, planning and what they're looking to do with that is quite a bit different. So it really wouldn't be, there are some that do multifaceted. But with the environmental consultant that we're working with on the Wausau chemical site, I'm not aware of them doing any type of planning. I think they're very specialized in what they do.
Okay, so what I'm saying, I guess, and I'm not being clear, is why can't we hire the consultant just to do the 2 properties north of there?
Oh.
And tell us what could be done there? Would that cut down his obligation of $100,000 if he's just looking at 2 sites instead of the I mean, he can't do anything with the Wausau chemical site, so why have him spend his time doing that?
Well, I would say it's, even if it's something as simple as infrastructure, roads, they're still going to go through that site.
So that's the
So
problem.
I think it's best to look at it as a continuous section. And, there's, Wausau Chemical is obviously not the only Superfund site that's, been in Wisconsin. So, we could very well have a consultant who's dealt with this kind of situation before, and they would have an experience and be able to say, if it's cleaned up to this level, here are some possibilities for what could be done. They may not assign a specific outcome for that, but they may give some options. And you want to be able to do that in harmony with the other sites. So, if they say there should be, just for example, a greenfield on the Wausau chemical site, then they'll say, okay, well, if there's going to be a greenfield there, then we won't necessarily need that in the other sections. So it's just kind of finding a balance between all 3 and being able to look at everything as a whole.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, I just want to restate it so that I get it through my head as well. Think of it as one long parcel or one big parcel, but also 3 different parts, kind of. And did I hear you correctly, when maybe even something commercial could be on that, or who knows, right? But that maybe that wouldn't be a living space, but that it should all be,
I
so
think
that it can go
there's
together.
probably a lot of possibilities. I don't have the expertise or experience to be able to tell you what that would be, but that's exactly why we would
Yeah.
hire them, and they could give us some options.
For the planning.
Yeah.
Oh. Alder,
can
so
call-
we
you
can
can
do,
call on him.
okay. Alder Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and congratulations on
Thank you.
your chairmanship. Tom Neal, 916 Hamilton Street. I just want to throw into this conversation a consideration. If I were a developer and I was interested in the other properties, not the chemical, but the other, I would want to have some intelligence on what is going on at the adjacent property. the gaining of this knowledge is strategic, not just for that space, but for the whole neighborhood, if you will. So if I'm a developer, I'm like, so what's going on over there? Is that going to be residential? Is it going to be a park? Is it going to be commercial? I mean, and the sooner we can kind of get those options lined up, the more, developers will have to look at. So I think it's important to get that kind of information, not just put it off. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Tierney.
I believe that Alder Killian had brought up a point previously that bringing in that second consultant for the Wausau chemical portion, she had asked what the additional cost would be for that second consultant approximately, but I don't recall hearing an answer on that.
Okay, thank you. I couldn't tell you what it would be, how it would be divided out. I don't know the exact, how they exactly would divide out that cost. I wouldn't say it'd be a third or anything like that, but it would be,
So that's included in the 100,000, is that what you're saying?
right.
Or that's
This
additional.
proposal is asking consultant to look at, all three of those large parcels, as well as, all the neighborhood inputs, the infrastructure around that area. So,
I must have misunderstood. I thought you said there would be a separate consulting entity for the Superfund site.
Correct.
correct. For the
Correct, and that's being
environmental-
handled by a separate contract.
And that's how much is a question.
I don't know what the amount on that is. So where they're at with it right now, they're bringing the consultant on. They're not going to exactly know the cost until they start getting through the work. But there was money budgeted. I don't know, Mary Ann, I see you logged on WebEx there. If you have any information on the budget for that. I don't know that, based on our conversation today, that it's really something that we can get into too deep here, but
I don't have it handy with me. I would also say that the EPA is heavily involved in our management of that site, and so some things we really don't have a discretion of whether we can do them or not. The EPA dictates that we do things. And a lot of the work is shared with two other entities that are considered responsible parties. And so we do not carry the full brunt of those expenses. But Kevin Fable, who's our environmental engineer, is the one that's working directly with those consultants. But the EPA oversees all of our work. We just got probably a $25,000 bill from the EPA last month for their oversight. So they bill us for oversight on that property. I think it is probably in the city's best interest to move towards closing that site just for that reason alone, to try to minimize the ongoing EPA workload.
Does that help clarify it?
It's a pretty complicated situation because of the other potentially responsible parties. This goes back, until I think the early 80s. So it's a pretty complex thing. To really have a full understanding of it would probably require GHD, who is the consultant, and Kevin Fable to give an update.
Alder Tierney.
So I guess my question would be, why would we not wait to hear what the condition is with these people working on the Wausau chemical site before we would hire a consultant to look at the project together? Since there's already people working on that site, why wouldn't we wait to see what their thoughts are before we hire this consultant to look at all three?
Mr. Lenz?
Thank you. Brad Lenz, City Planner. I think to answer that, the plan that we're looking to do is a long-term plan. We did a long-term plan for what was called the East Riverfront, turned into River Life. That was done in the early 2010s. some of the information may be dated, but it's still a plan that we reference, and it's something we, need to do first before we can really, get the ball rolling in terms of development. And that's where we're at with this site, is it's sort of a blank slate. We have some unknowns, some timelines are unknown on Wausau Chemical, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't start planning for it now. I mean, if you look at that map, we're not just looking at those 3 sites. Those are the focus, but we're really looking at the whole area. We're looking at the athletic park neighborhood, even the residential area. And again, the point is to try to tie these things together at a high level. And we may not have all the details for that Wausau Chemical or the waterworks site. That doesn't mean we shouldn't at least start putting some general thoughts into it, because if we just sit around and wait for 10 years, then, we're sort of just pushing it back, and we may be holding ourselves up on the other sites to the north, which could be ready, in the near term, and get those developments going. And again, as has been said by Randy and Andy, it's just a matter of trying to tie everything together and making sure we're moving things forward in an appropriate manner and in a cost-effective manner in terms of laying down the infrastructure, getting things going on one piece while we may be waiting on another piece. Again, it's long-term, and there's different sites that are at different stages, but I think it's important to at least get the initial steps going and try to weave it all together and at least have a plan of attack, even if we're not going to be moving on certain pieces immediately, if that makes any sense.
Alder Hinkie?
So this is just a request for a proposal for consultants, correct? So we're going to get like a list of consultants that,
Yeah.
with their quotes, or with their, before we greenlight any sort of like report from them, correct?
Yeah. We're looking for engineering and planning firms. When we did the East Riverfront, again, River Life area was a global firm that had expertise in multidisciplinary fields, and we'll be hopefully receive a lot of different proposals from different firms, and we can pick and choose which ones have the expertise and the costs. We'll look at what they're proposing and how much they think something like this will cost. So this RFP process, we want to get the RFP out there and get those proposals back. Hopefully we'll get a number of proposals that will then weigh and see which one we think a selection committee thinks is the best. We'll bring that back to the committee and for approval, and make sure you guys agree that this is the firm that we think can do the best job for us.
Okay.
Good question.
I'll move that we go forward with an RFP for the North Riverfront plan.
Is there a second?
You don't have to vote for it if you second it. You don't have to vote for it if you second it. We just need a second to all vote on it, and then that goes forward.
Yeah. And-
Thank you, Chad.
Okay.
Yeah,
second.
yeah, and I think technically, Carol, I think you could second it if you wanted to.
Okay, that's what I didn't know. And can I make a comment? Again, this is just to move forward with a request for proposals. It doesn't approve of proposals. It's just move forward to see what there would be, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, so there is a motion by Alder Hinkie. A second by Alder Killian, or no? Otherwise, I'll second it. Okay, second by Alder Killian. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so what happens then?
It'll just go to the council with a recommendation two
Okay.
to two,
Thank you.
correct?
I forgot
Tie
about
vote
that
is a
part.
fail, but your committee can still decide to forward it to the council on a 2-2 vote. That's up to your committee to decide whether you want to forward the failed recommendation on a tie vote to the council or not. That's up to your committee.
Okay. So committee members?
That's what we've done in the past.
Sent it on to council?
Yeah.
How do you feel about sending it on to council? Okay. So that's what we will do then, tie vote, and we will, though, send it on to council for discussion. Last, second to last, joint meeting date with Finance Committee on May 14th, 2024. So I'm guessing we just have to approve this, or?
Just, it's more of an announcement that
Oh.
we're planning on a joint meeting with the Finance Committee next
Next.
Tuesday. I don't know that there's been a time set on that at this point. Oftentimes, the Economic Development Committee and Finance Committee are working on similar things, so we find it to be more productive to have both groups in the room at the same time to discuss it instead of taking it through both in separate discussions, especially when we have some overlap on those committees. So just an announcement, keep an eye on your email, and we'll follow up with that.
Okay, any questions? Nope. Okay, then I am looking for a motion to adjourn. Alder Hinkie, motion by Alder Hinkie, second by Alder Killian, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you.
Good job, Bye, Liz.
I'll brush up.
Yeah.